All right, ladies and gentlemen, those online, welcome back. So now we are into discussing the so what now. And as you've seen by the agenda, what we're going to do now is some capability briefs, in essence to provide some updates on current capabilities, future capabilities, again, trying to specifically focus on the potential and support requirements to the Royal Commission. Then, after lunch, we're going to go into a deep dive to really start to break down to what we can actually do here and now, or prepare for, or start doing some key takeaways given the combined horsepower we have in this room and also online, and also being the incredible people that we are, highly trained to be able to go out there and find solutions to problems. So I'm going to start off, and I'm speaking here with regards to Voice of a Veteran. So what I'm going to do is too many things. All the things. So I'm going to leave that up there, and this is on the Voice of a Veteran website. I founded Voice of a Veteran in October last year after going through my own experiences through a failed transition process to a point of my own suicidal ideation at the end of August, and that's, people have heard enough about that. And particularly for me, it was sort of going back and conducting my own critical analysis of where I had failed and where the system had failed me. And then a few particularly mental realizations, things like I had handed over my responsibility, become entitled, waiting on others to do things, become in a place of hopelessness and helplessness, and then what I could do to get myself out of that. And then it came from engaging with my old support networks, particularly my former guys that I served with, and hearing them having the same stories too often. And the whole purpose became derived from what I could do here and now from a place of responsibility. And that has been the governing couple of paragraphs there that have really provided me with the focus and the context for everything we've done over the last 6 months. And again, the Voice of a Veteran really has only been around since October of last year. But there's some key points in there to highlight. And I've said it before, that it's not just about suicide, it's about all those who degenerate to that level, are living with anxiety and depression, and the huge stigmas that are currently still around that. And it came from a personal realisation with a bit of a marketing hat on of what I could afford, given that my head, hopefully you'll be able to see, I love planning, and I think I'm very good at planning in explicit OCD detail, and the fact that my head went to a place that I so explicitly planned how to take my own life, and one of the key reasons behind that was to bring awareness to this and provide a aspirational and or relatable profile, being former special forces and all that good shit. That is marketing 101, to bring enough attention to this situation and then trying to put that into best support our community. During that, and as far as, Voice of a Veteran goes, where is Sam? So Sam Assa in the back room is the only employee of Voice of a Veteran. It is Sam and it is myself. I'm on a Cat B pension and we crack on. And Sam is actually employed under my own personal company, because as a whole part of this, I really wanted to delink any risk in the current climate that is finances and ESOs and mental health and veterans. And to be honest, I've probably gone out on too much of a limb, but we'll come to that sort of later. But Sam is the absolute workhorse behind Voice of the Veteran. So everything from organising this entire day is not an events team, it's Sam, supported by a few others. Everything that's on our social media is Sam putting it together, encouraging me to do it, managing our website and all these sorts of things. So it's been epic, you know, and Sam is not a veteran herself, but she gets it and she keeps me accountable, and she also provides a translation to what is the civilian market. So the key part that helped me arrive at what was needed for Voice of a Veteran, coming back to the centre of gravity, that is trust, okay? And that was trust of primarily the veteran community, but for me, it actually came down to what was the critical issue when I entered into this foray in October of last year, informed by things like the health and wellness report that had that high risk category as those veterans primarily under the age of 30, 35, okay, for a number of issues. And that's my demographic, and that's something that I nearly became a part of, all right? And very rapidly through a number of things, really appreciating that we already actually had the trust of the Australian people, and it was something that I really kind of took for granted or didn't realise, and how much support momentum was behind that. The importance to remain relevant and effective, focusing on purpose and results. The requirement to do whatever I did to remain independent from government and DVA, okay? Whether that's in form, fit or function, particularly to what was just sort of the current climate, as we all know, is that relationship particularly with DVA. It is what it is, and that's well aware, and also there's some other elements and organisations even within the ex-service organisation that it was more important to distance myself from as opposed to actually work with, given the focus was that younger demographic. A number of these things came down to removing uncertainty and bringing hope. This is the whole context of everything to do with 2020 and the uncertainty that everyone was thrust into with everything from COVID and all else. And truly appreciating that so much of the issues that came from my own experience and that of so many others came from feeling like we weren't being heard. You know, that feeling of hopelessness. And for me, that moment of suicide came from a place of literally feeling like there was no other hope. That was the only way to do it, or I saw hope in doing that. And by speaking out and achieving cut through to getting these messages to people, it's all about bringing hope. And I'll tell you what, along the way it's brought plenty of hate. And that's fantastic, because if people have enough time to hate, then they don't need hope. The other key part, leading by example. As many in this room, I've only ever been trained to lead by example. And that's been drawing on a number of things by trying to be relatable, trying to be aspirational, and even in working independently, it's come down from an individual responsibility to want to accept risk. There's not enough accountability in this world at the moment, I think many are aware of, and my desire to lone wolf it a little bit has only come from a place of being willing to accept any and all that risk. Risk from stepping out and admitting that I was deployed to Afghanistan and killed insurgents and the risk that that brings to my family, through to the risk of being attacked in the media, and just knowing that I sort of have the ability to be trained and the ability to sort of deal with that. And that's been through a level of responsibility and not through anything other than my willingness to accept risk. And then a large part that sort of governed any and all courses of action in development have come down to this bottom right piece, in the ability to influence noise and numbers, really doing that quick task analysis of how you actually achieve true effect with politicians and real immediate effect. You have to affect where the votes come from or where the public opinion comes from. And that's been a large governing piece to sort of forming, storming and norming many of the courses of action. The campaigns, again, primarily the initial campaign I launched out on was mental health and suicide prevention from my own piece. And that sort of launched off around Veteran Health Week, September, October last year, and particularly focusing heavily on that transition from the ADF. And then all of a sudden, the battle space just had a number of things enter into it. Primarily, 21st of October, the Marine heard a pop story that named my platoon, November Platoon, as executing a prisoner. And I sort of sat there waiting for Department of Defence to speak up. I sat there waiting for others to do what I thought they were meant to do. And by this time, I'd already had that light bulb moment that I couldn't keep waiting for things. So I just took to social media and immediately grabbed onto that. And we went from there. And again, that came from a place of needing to protect my lads who, even during the period of my own suicidal ideation, reaching out to DVA, and before that Marine heard a pop story, one of the guys from my unit who I went through selection with had killed himself with his 2 or 3 kids left behind. So it was sort of like an enough is enough. Brereton report release, you know, things like the meritorious unit citation, immediately affecting things like the families of those who I'd served with and fallen. And that's really where Voice of a Veteran just hit more than I expected it to be. Before this point, it was an Instagram and Facebook account. And then after this, we launched a cheap Squarespace website that is still the same cheap Squarespace website. We just launched an online petition, and within 6 days, we had 60,000 signatures, and all of a sudden had a huge outpouring of responsibility from thousands of emails each day. And they weren't just emails of support, but they were emails of people who were inspired by what we've been through, veterans, through to people who really needed help. And all of a sudden, you know, not wanting to duplicate effort, but all of a sudden realising that we were taking on this huge responsibility and wanting to do that properly. Things like the Presumption of Innocence, you see me going to battle for. Public opinion version 2.0. A lot of this around my own life at the time was my grandfather, who passed away in December, but I went and saw him in October and spoke with him just before he passed away, and he was 90 years old, Korea and Vietnam veteran. And when the Brereton report came out, his simple words were, "Don't let your guys become what like happened to my guys after Vietnam." And that was that really true appreciation of going into it later, how much the Australian public didn't understand the potential threat in my eyes of our sort of demographic being labelled in this situation. So that really motivated a lot of that. Other campaigns we stepped up to, particularly in February when Sydney and Melbourne announced that they were not going to have their parades. You know, we took straight up that cause. It's just ridiculous, even before the national quarantine plan had rolled out. And admittedly, we didn't achieve as much as we wanted to, but this will come back to, and links always back to that top main effort of how important Anzac Day is to us, getting people together. And I don't need to harp on to the people in this room of the true importance behind Anzac Day in the current climate. Royal Commission, National Commissioner. This is a key one. We would have heard me come out first and foremost against Jackie Lambie's conversations poo-pooing the National Commissioner, and then for the Royal Commission as opposed to the National Commissioner, when it got to the point of my understanding how political the conversation had become, that it simply become that you're not going to get a Royal Commission if you get a National Commissioner, and the conversations such as the exact duplication in policy, same powers, this, that and the other, actually really came from attending the National Commissioners Symposium in Canberra just the other month, and speaking with a number of families who they lost their children to suicide, and so many people from already within our community, and truly actually removing my pragmatic brain from this and appreciating how much resentment and how much moral injury and how much anger and emotion was behind this, and how much so many in our community would not be able to progress on a path of healing if that simple phrase, Royal Commission, was not called. And that's when, particularly 2 months ago, it literally essentially took up the role of a lobbyist to get that pushed through. And now we're here, and I'll go on to it before Dr. Boss speaks. We need both, and I said that from the start. From the thousands of emails that we get, I know Jackie Lambie even has extra people in her office stood up to deal with these defence issues, through to all of the issues we have in this room, that some of them require that link up to the government expertise. Having Dr. Boss up there with her 30 staff and with her integration into the defence systems and with her intimate knowledge from coroner through to legal is a critical capability. And one of the key outputs from today I'll go into later is potentially working with you all to help get that back on and make sure we progress that through, because I don't know about you, but that's a workload we need support pushing forward, particularly as we identify the threats such as stagnation and the emotional triggers that are going to be brought about by this Royal Commission. And then withdrawal from Afghanistan, that's still one ongoing. Impact, okay. So much of this has been a focus on ID&I and IO, information dominance influence, things that I think we really do very poorly in the veteran space is marketing, particularly combined with the Australian culture of tall poppy cutting syndrome and everything else in between. We are probably the first people to step ourselves backwards, and especially from my background of Special Forces, that was one of the key things that we never did as well, but then identifying that opportunity that simply is what the commercial market is and how to best achieve that impact to influence noise and numbers and public awareness. And the biggest part for me was realising, particularly as we launched that petition online, how much support was out there for our veteran community. It is massive. And you know, I'll go through some of our statistics in a moment, but the wave of support that followed is absolutely incredible. Through to the veteran community, and again, in particular, narrowing it down to that high-risk demographic, you know, the impact that I've had there has been pretty fantastic, just from their feedback from it, through to how many chest pokes I get on Anzac Day. But you know what, at the same time, I'm public enemy number one for people outside and older than that demographic. You know, most lieutenant colonels and above hate me, and that's fine, because they're not the ones that are committing suicide. They're the ones that have influence over these things, and as we move into the next phase, they're the ones who have the key opportunity to help impact what I think is the key cultural requirement, and that's leadership of our junior commanders and our junior leaders, down to supporting those in that high-risk demographic. ESO community, 2 words there: agitated and engaged. Again, either love or hate me, or indifferent, which is apparently the opposite of love and is even worse. But look, you know, we're energised, we're having these conversations, and you know, I kind of make no apologies for that, but I fully appreciate that it's been a byproduct of phase 1, and now we need to look to phase 2. And government, I would like to think that the government has actually finally become much more engaged. And this is not just me and Voice of a Veteran. This has been so many others, and wanting to work with others and apply that critical point of pressure at the apex required. And I dare say that even things like Minister Chester through to a new Defence Minister have become so much more involved and aware of what the actual issues are. And we're at this point here and now as a result of so much of the public awareness that we've been able to drive around these issues that has been dragging on for a long, long time. While all the hate has come through, I really actually don't like this, but Sam wanted me to put these in here. I get Sam to keep a whole folder of all the testimonials that we have coming through. I don't like putting these up there, but there are hundreds of these. And when I have those terrible moments of just haters coming through, Sam, it just sends these through to me on messages. That one on the right from the 57-year-old guy was one of the very first ones we received. And that's when we talk about purpose. Yesterday I got chest poked by someone who said, quote, "Every time you get up there and flap your gums on TV, I have to handle 60 more calls. Because you don't have a follow-up, you're being more negligent in this space than anyone else I've ever come across." And I really don't want to ever do that. I would probably say that those issues are already out there, and if we're having those conversations and they need to be addressed, that's a big issue with our reactive systems at the moment. But when these sort of come through, and when it goes back to that main effort of supporting people's mental health and hopefully suicide prevention, these are the sort of things that inspire me through. While that's up there, I want to just talk through some of the key community we've been able to aggregate along the way. Like I said, through our lovely little website, we have an email database of over 100,000 people at the moment with an open rate of, a click rate, open rate, whatever it is, of our emails over 30%. And from what I've been told, that's pretty good. Social media, 7,500 Instagram, 8,500 Facebook. But the whole thing about that is, that demographic is primarily between 19 and 35. So on our social media, we've sort of been capturing that market where they already want to. And one thing we did over the Christmas New Year period was step up the Veteran Support Force closed Facebook group. And that was a reactive measure to when the lockdown occurred over Christmas, New Year's. And my key fear was we already knew how bad that period was, to set up a closed group for those who were caught in hotel quarantine and lockdown. And I think we've got about 569 members on that. And Jace over here, chuck your hand up, Jace. He's our man who manages that online. And it is one of the most positive and inspiring things with, daily motivation, and people check in on a map where they are all around the country. And 2/3 of the people on there are actually veterans. I wanted to set it up to help those civvies that were caught in quarantine and help go through some form of, daily operational routine that we go through. But all of a sudden, it's just overwhelmed by young and old veterans who just want to be able to get in there and help. And that's been sort of a key realization that we have. And so many of the emails we get these days are people just saying, "How can I help?" And it's not all about money. Voices of Veterans so far has cost $120,000 over the last 6 months, and $90,000 of that has been into marketing. Realising that more money can actually create more problems, and when you are just simply efficient in what you do, but now is the time to get more people into support with services, it really helps to maintain that authentic purpose. Google search, the top result for Veterans Voice. Emails, random phone calls. I don't know how people get my phone number, but we actually answer about 2,500 emails each week. And again, Sam's absolutely incredible doing that. That's sort of our digital community. And the key part I've then realised over the, like many of you in this room, we're going to have this conversation, our physical community. Over the Christmas, New Year's period, once the borders opened up, sort of travelled around and did some Veteran Connect sessions, primarily between Southeast Queensland and Townsville, and managed to speak to over 1,500 veterans, of which in those conversations or follow-up, 419, I think we're up to, were vulnerable enough to say that they'd experienced suicidal behaviour, ideation or attempt. And again, that was just that huge demographic. And these are people in service and out of service. And so many of them, that was the first time they were having those conversations when we were physically connecting. And a huge piece to me in this realisation has been that we need to have more of this physical connection. We've been so isolated by this last year, and I'll go into it later when we discuss some of these service providers, that there's really nothing that replaces that physical connection for helping to start solving some of these problems with each other. Now, this is something that I just particularly want to highlight. How good is that Pauline Hanson's advertisement is, please explain. So this is a local column that she writes for a paper, but just in particular on the right-hand side, this isn't to glorify myself, this is to help people understand that the appetite to support veterans really is there, and so many people are there lying in wait. And what I have realised myself is that people just haven't been having these conversations with them. I had a conversation with Pauline Hanson and her team during the first sitting week in March, trying to help Senator Lambie really push forward against the National Commission and for a Royal Commission. And then I went and attended the symposium and spoke with so many more veterans specific to that problem, and then went back and had conversations around that realisation of the true issue being that moral injury and that emotional trauma, and the threat of us missing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to help potentially reset the scale. And within a 15-minute conversation, they had a senator there who had 2 votes with her 2 senators promising to do that. And the rest is politics, but the key part is, and as I now stand here putting my full support behind Dr. Boss and her team and the capability they'll provide, then going back to these same people and educating them along that pathway. And again, this is what we need to be able to do together. It needs to be more than one person, but the political sway is there. We have just been so poor in representing ourselves, and I feel that that's a tremendous opportunity moving forward. Key takeaways. Key takeaways relevant to, sorry, I can't walk around. Key takeaways relevant to the Brereton Inquiry. Again, this is the inquiry, not the actual report. The inquiry went on for 4.5 years, and as per the nature of the inquiry, once people were called forward or provided evidence, we were unable to talk to each other, and it was one of the most isolating experiences our community had ever experienced, already being sort of isolated by nature from society and from even internal to defence. And the mental health decline that we experienced and the number of people we lost to suicide during that is criminally negligent, in my opinion. And I was called to give evidence the very first time, the day before I discharged, and received no follow-up and received the fridge magnet here as open arms. And leading into this Royal Commission, the key takeaway for me is that we rely on another reactive model to follow up with people or have people reach out to after engaging in this potentially morally traumatic, emotionally traumatic system and process. We're going to lose more people. We need to learn that lesson and turn on proactive solutions specific to this. And same with Afghanistan, and again linking into where we were left at the end of the Brereton report was that 95% of the Australian population did not adequately have an understanding of what we actually did in Afghanistan. And the results and findings and the accusations of the Brereton report were very nearly the legacy of the modern Australian population, if not the world, of what we did in Afghanistan, because we did not take the Australian public along the journey. And that is the key opportunity, in my belief, what we must do as a part of this Royal Commission. Because how can we remove the uncertainty and provide greater support for our veterans after service if they're still not understood outside of service? The more we help educate the Australian public, we better and more permissive we make the soft landing environment outside of service. And again, this Royal Commission, as a whole opportunity for the outpouring, is an opportunity to bring the Australian public along this very finite and what will be heavily televised and heavily media watched experience. Key piece I also identified is that cultural change is so badly needed. There is no point pouring money into these problems if you already have a bad culture. Any corporate will tell you that. The V in veteran stands for victim in the majority of the public's eyes. I've tried to combat that so badly, even in media appearances. It's so easy for me to talk about how I wanted to take my own life, and every single media appearance I've gone into trying to show people that I am not a fucking victim. I'm here and good to go, and this is what defence made me, but I allowed myself, and the systemic issues helped me to perpetuate this point. But it needs to be more than me, it needs to be everyone. And there are so many here who have that story to give, and we really need to start doing that. We need to show the Australian public that veterans don't survive after service, we thrive. And we need to change the mindset of veterans to being one of entitled to being one of responsible. We need to change the mindset of so many of the ex-service and veteran support organisations to refocus back on their profit. There's a Freudian slip. Refocus back on their purpose. As opposed to profit, positioning or politics. Why are you doing what are you doing? And as a part of this as well, we need to change the culture around education. There's this whole piece about get a qualification. As we all know, we've all had competency logbooks as long as they can be, but what are you actually good at and what are you confident at doing? So many veterans leave defence with so many great qualifications, but what are you confident in and what are you competent in, and putting that into practice? And then the systemic change, and I mean, that's why we're here, but the key thing is it's not just all about the Royal Commission. There are so many issues, and we'll go through them later, that can be achieved here and now, and it's putting some power into putting pen to policy and working with some of the organisations. Like we all know, transition is such a huge silver bullet of potential fixing of so many of our issues in this space. But then also the potential opportunities within the National Commissioner, ex-service organisations and DVA. Key critical capability issues that I've identified: lack of understanding and accurate representation of the veteran community. 101. Be that at government policy level, we're so fractured left, right and centre, and that goes into my next piece. And these are not only my words, these are words from over 1,500 people that we've surveyed with regards to transitioning from defence in the last 2 to 3 years. Lack of cohesion, duplication, attitudes, infighting, waste of resources, generating tension, confusion, intimidation, anxiety, and deterring them from actually engaging in services outside of their service. Would anyone argue that that's not the ESO arena at the moment? There are some individually fantastic things, but as far as our cohesion together, there are some fantastic individual purpose, but we're fighting against each other. So some key capability gaps that fall out of that. Advocacy, I don't want to call it lobbying, because lobbying, you're a gun for hire. Advocacy, you're advocating for something. And this is up to that sort of political level. Intergenerational veteran engagement and potential. One of the biggest outpourings of support I've received and we've received has been from the Vietnam veterans, who again have this lived experience in dealing with these things. And so many have been activated and engaged by this finally coming to the public's attention. And all of these stories and informations that are in there. And stuff that we need to take these lessons on board and learn them. And one of the key issues, national and one of the state RSLs asked me to propose this question to the group about how do we better get younger veterans engaged with the RSL. And the answer is why. Veterans will engage with a purpose, not an organisation or a function. And that's what we need to start engaging with. And if you are demonstrating results, all that I've learned is that people will gravitate towards you. If you are asking people to join you, the Australian 101 through to Veteran 101, they'll automatically ask why. And if you can't demonstrate through results as opposed to noise, then it's not going to happen. There's still a huge mental health stigma that we need to keep working on. The younger generation is actually getting better at it. And to be honest, it's actually my generation and above that needs more work. The veteran ground-up approach. We keep relying too much on top-down from others to provide our own authority, DVA, government budgets, whatever. But there's meant to be over 600,000 veterans in this country, let alone all of our friends and family. And the groundswell and effort and energy and capability that is harnessed within every single person in this room and then force multiplied when working together is actually where the true results come from, as opposed to sitting there and waiting, because we can do much more than the lesser amount of people up here just through simple man hours and workforce requirements. And the veteran narrative and identity. I want to jump on the veteran narrative identity as I go to this. And this is just, bear with me, this is my theory, and these are going to be my last slides. This is where I see our current situation from my own lived experience and lived experience of so many other people that we've engaged with. Over on the left-hand side of the screen is the current services, and be that the current focus or the current delivery requirements, and on the right, the current self, again, current focus. I don't think anyone else is going to argue that the clinical requirements, be they psychologists, be they claimed to DVA, and again, sorry, on a graduating scale of non-qualified through to level of qualifications sloping from the bottom to the top, our clinical requirements are absolutely overloaded. Our wait times are huge. You can't get in to see a psychologist, all these sorts of things. And when people don't get into clinical services, they fall straight down. And as you can see, when they fall down, there's so much more space that they're not being captured at the bottom. We have these wraparound services that are frantically trying to get in there and support underneath. But what they are not being supported by is the wellness aspect down the bottom. And the wellness aspect, I just relate it directly over to the self pyramid on the other side, whereby we are really focused on mental health as being a clinical issue. And while I see a psychologist and a psychiatrist, the number one health and support and treatment and rehabilitation I get from is engaging with my old community, my peers, my friends, the people that I serve with, my support network. Before it saves up to require mental health and clinical support, I'm able to conduct mental daily health sessions, mental fitness sessions, by just actually being a bit more vulnerable and open in those conversations. But we're putting so much focus on entering into this pyramid at the very top clinical piece and overwhelming that, whereas so many, and I'm adamant of this, so many of these issues can be resolved if we get back to putting so much more of a focus on the bottom of the pyramid and focusing on our all-round health and wellness. And that comes from community. At the moment, and I myself have been a big advocate for this, the best thing we need to do is get people new purpose. I am great at getting purpose, and I am great at embedding my identity in that purpose. But when you lose that purpose, and you will lose that purpose because shit changes, if you don't have a community as a foundation to fall back to, you fall off the cliff. And that's what happens when we lose that purpose, we fall off the cliff. Whereas I have seen that when we have a community as a strong foundation and are able to re-identify within that community, purpose pops up left, right, and center. And the amount of people in this room who will have been, I applied for over 200 jobs online, and then all of a sudden, as soon as you have word-of-mouth conversations, there's jobs popping up left, right, and center because people actually value the capabilities that are within your identity that you haven't yet identified with. But on the larger systemic piece, this identity piece is something we still have to work on from the ground up, because the veteran identity is still not there. we are still not grasping what the identity of a veteran is. We have the DVA determination. I've been feeding that to people one day at service, this, that, and the other. But just go out to Anzac Day, and I saw some young guys taking their medals off and asked them why, because they didn't have an ICB or an ACB above those medals. We are the worst to each other. And until we can actually help people identify with the fact that they served and support each other in this situation, we can continue to fracture each other and really erode at that central layer that is that identity. And some people are never going to be able to escape above the ground level of progression because they are not comfortable with who they are. Because we, as a community who should be the most supportive, are not supporting them to do so with the purpose of progressing ourselves collectively. And this is where I say that mental fitness, mental health, at the moment there's such a heavy focus on mental health, whereas all that I have learned is that the more effort I put into mental fitness, I'm now seeing my psychologist and psychiatrist once a month. My medication's dropped way off because I've reconnected with my people, and every time there's a problem, I speak to people about this, and for me, veterans and anyone at the community level, engaging directly up to the clinical level, engaging directly up to DVA, engaging directly up to ComSuper, this is where you actually start to cause the biggest clinical issues. I spent 18 months advocating myself directly to DVA, thinking, I can do this. And that's what drove me to insanity. And now I'm on to my third advocate, and Bob's here in the room, because we don't have our community. The other day at the gym, there was a guy who's discharging, and he's put all of his paperwork in through DVA, but he still hasn't put through his ComSuper. And he's never even knew that that's a completely separate way to do it. And we'll come to this later, and that's just simple pathways. And we are all learning these things from having these conversations with each other, but we haven't formalised this into an SOP template for people to go through. And that's not within defence or within JTA, that's within the veteran community. Because there is the in-country brief, and then there's the brief in-country. And we are in-country, and we need to provide that brief. And we're going to go on to next to provide some capability briefs. I don't know why my boxes are stuffing up. Sorry, this must be that old Google Slides versus PowerPoint thing. But this is the critical need I identified when doing my own mission analysis with regards to the Royal Commission. The so what now? We need to do what needs to be done to maximise and support veterans and veteran family engagement with the Royal Commission in Defence of Veteran Suicide in order to support the healing and progression of the Australian veteran community. I'm going to come back to that, because the whole part for me has been, so what now? Being able to get up there and make a noise and do these things and achieve some very rapid and dynamic growth at great cost to potential long-term stability, but to achieve the required point whereby we have the legal authority and resourcing to then have this opportunity. And for everyone in this room, Voice of a Veteran is disappearing. Voice of a Veteran has lived its existence, and it will maintain as a podcast, which is where we get that outreach to that demographic who want to tune in and do it. But it has served its function, and that's been a huge part about not overly investing resources in it, because it's been a short-term sprint. And I enter into this conversation and the large part about today with a hope to work with the combined experiences in here to help address what I've identified as some of the critical needs, and I know that many of you have identified as some of the critical needs as well, to pick holes in each other with the focus to then look forward to restructure something moving forward that is going to specifically cater to this niche critical requirement, that we're going to identify the opportunities and the threats, and that's supporting our community and maximising all the opportunities that come around from this Royal Commission.